Hello everyone, Eb here with Tech Motorsports, and let's pick up right where we left off, and this is part 3 of the E36 M3. So what we got left, just to do a quick summary, is we have the intake manifold that we have to swap over from OBD2 to OBD1, and still all the coolant hoses, and we still have to finalize the steering rack and the inner tie rods, and the suspension and some brake lines and stuff like that. So let's get straight to it. All right, so now it's time to concentrate on the top portion of the motor and the car itself. So hopefully I can remember everything, but I will touch base as I go as well. So the tensioners, we're going to replace pretty much all the tensioners there. The water pump housing, we're going to put a new one on as well. New thermostat, and a new oil filter housing as well, because it is going to have a Euro style oil cooler, so we're going to end up doing that. We're also going to replace the valve cover gasket and replace the OBD2 intake manifold and install an OBD1 from an M50. So we're going to go ahead and get that going. So at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start ripping everything apart, and then I'll pick up here a little later. So stay tuned for that. All right, so pretty much all the parts have been removed. You got the intake manifold, the front, the thermostat housing, the water pump, and all the tensioners, and the yeah, pretty much it's all gone. So as you could end up seeing, she's a little bit dirty, but then again, you know, kind of expected with the just BMW oil leaks. That's usually what it is. So so let's take a look at a couple little things a little bit closer, and just some of the areas that technically I will be going through and cleaning it, just because that's just how it is and how I am. I don't like to put new stuff back on dirty crap. So yeah, let's take a look at it real quick. All right, so the valve cover's still on. I haven't removed that yet, but I am going to clean a little bit of the head right there, and then also just that cylinder head area right here where the Vanos line goes, and then all of that. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to clean up in the intake runners as best as possible. That's why I went ahead and already got my rag stuffed in there nice and tight. I got a couple ways to do it, and but I'll go ahead and clean that up and make sure that there is no debris going into the cylinder head. So yeah, she looks pretty dirty, but I'll clean her up, make it look a little bit better. And the worst part, or the worst leak, would be right here where the Vanos, technically, you know, they all tend to leak right here in the timing cover area, and it's just all dirty. So I'll go ahead and clean that up. All right, so I pretty much got everything cleaned. I went ahead and did the runners, got that pretty much almost done. Still have the rags in there, so I need to pull those out and make sure I don't get nothing in there, which I have a vacuum, shop vacuum, so I'll end up doing it that way. That way, any of the materials that's coming up, it'll should suck it up. So yeah, so much for the block. The block, well, you know, it's dirty and kind of nasty. There's only so much you could end up doing, but I did clean it up a tad bit. So the front is now clean. Take a quick peek at it real quick. All right, so there we go. There's the front. As you can see, all the oil and grime is all gone. I mean, it's just oil and dirt that's been collecting over the years, but it just looks nice and clean. The lower AC tensioner has already been installed, so we got the new one already in there. While I was cleaning everything, I already had cleaned where the water pump goes, right here especially, where the O-ring sits, and same thing with the thermostat housing right here. Got it cleaned, and I used a red scuff pad to be able to get in there, and then the same thing with the outside. Just took a little bit of time, but yes, she's all cleaned up. The next thing I'm going to end up doing is I got her disconnect as much as minimal as possible here with the electrical harness and some tubing, so I can get to the two O-rings that are here on the metal pipe. So the hoses are all back together, all have been replaced, except for one. This little puppet right here, which is the little small one that connects to the main pipe, that one we're missing. So other A, we ordered it and it didn't come in, or just left it off, but it's all right. It's a smaller one and it's easy to get to, and we could probably do it at a later point. So we could just order this hose. There are a couple more things we want to do to the car down the road, but yeah. So we'll have to get that new hose, because at this point this is the only hose that has not been replaced. So and it's the one that connects to the throttle body. So I already got the thermostat housing in, and the Stewart racing water pump installed as well. And now the next thing I'm going to end up doing is working on the filter housing. Now I got to also replace the valve inside the filter housing, so I'll go through that here in a few minutes. All right, so next is the oil filter housing. So we're going to go ahead and get that going, but before I go in and install it, I have to replace the thermostat that's in here with a diverter valve, which is right here. So it has a circlip ring around it and a little cap. I'm going to take those out, and what I'm going to end up using is I have one of my little plastic little wedgers, and I'm going to use my flathead screwdriver to get that snap ring out. That way I don't score anything in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get to that. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is the ring itself, the circlip. I'm going to bring this sucker around, try to make it easier to remove. So now what I've got is sticking out a little bit, and it should give me enough room and leverage to get it out. There we go. So we're going to reuse these two things right here. The spring comes out, and the thermostat is out. So this goes in. As you can see, there's the little piece that goes into that little slot. So I've got to make sure that goes in there. No lubrication needed. So there we go. That goes into place. And now for the snap ring. I'm going to put the snap ring in the same way I took it out. And she's snapped in, and then now for the final, rotate it back. There we go. She is all done. Now it's just time to install it. Pretty much got most of it up here reassembled. The alternator, the power steering pump, all the accessory pulleys and the belt have been installed. Right now what I'm working on is the fitment of the radiator and the oil cooler and the oil cooler lines. Now because this is an S52 and we're installing a Euro slash S54 cooler, what's getting in the way is the duct for the E36 for the oil line. So what we're going to have to do is I'm just going to have to cut this section out and put the line in place, and that's it. Everything else seems to be fitting. That's the only other modification mods that we have that I have to do to get it to work. And once all of that's said and done, I'll be installing the radiator, the fan, and get all this wrapped up, and then work on the intake manifold. But let's take a look at the radiator real quick on the components. All right, so here we are. We got the CSF Eurospec aluminum radiator with the Eurospec oil cooler, and with the oil cooler we got the Turner mounting brackets for that, so they just slide into place. Now, one thing I did want to touch base is originally we ended up getting these little Power Flex rubber grommets, and this is for offset the radiator inside the car. Unfortunately, these are for E46s only. By looking at the paperwork, so we'll see what it ends up saying. And it's funny too, because if you look at it, it says E30, E36, E46. So I don't know. But what this will do to this particular motor and that particular car, it will bring the radiator, the lower section of the radiator, further towards or away from the motor, which would help, in my opinion, if you have an electric fan, and that electric fan is a little bit too close to the water pump pulley and the water pump nut, I guess, where you spin the clutch on, if you're not running like a super thin electric fan. So but the only downfall to that is the top section. It'll tip it forward a tad bit. So I'm just gonna try these just to see what happens, and then we'll go from there. It's very simple to remove it, but yeah. So next thing is throwing this in there and keep plugging away. Everything has been swapped over from the OBD2 intake manifold to the OBD1. Modifications have been done to the bracket per the instructions, which instructions are pretty much straightforward for the most part. The only thing I have to figure out is just where am I going to place the solenoid for the secondary air pump. And this one is for the purge system, the fuel purge system. So this one is just going to be located right back where originally was. It's just going to be connecting to this hose here that is provided in the kit. Now the one thing in the kit, there's in my opinion, a better method to mess with the intake air temperature sensor. This one is a metal one, screws in here for the M50. You can relocate it into here like the instructions said, but there is another option, and the option is there is a modified OBD2 sensor that they thread, and it threads into the OEM slot of the M50 intake manifold. So yeah, very nice and clean, and yeah, just a few things I got to shuffle around when I go to install it. Just try to make it as clean as possible. Now, one thing I end up doing is this T-fitting here. I don't know if you can see it very well. I end up adding an additional hose that came with the kit for the hard line going to the fuel pressure regulator. And then as of right now, I just got my other line just placed in the back for right now. Everything will be fitted here soon, and here are my little brackets. They came with the kit. This is for the fuel rail. So yep, I'm gonna go try to get this installed. All right, so the OBD1 intake is installed with the cover. Before I had bolted on the fuel rail and I had the intake manifold installed, I went ahead and replaced the valve cover gasket as well. So that one's taken care of. So the cover here is the M50 cover, and it looks cleaner. The only thing is, because we're using the OBD2 fuel rail, it sits up a little higher on the valve cover side. But overall, it looks like a super clean install, and that's the whole goal. Now, with that said, I did have trying to position the secondary air pump solenoid, and that normally goes here underneath the cover on the OBD1 intake. I still have it there because of the wire, but what I end up doing is, because I didn't want the vacuum line coming out this way, I drilled a hole where the solenoid would be at between runners 1 and 2 through that plastic bridge that goes down there, and I ran my vacuum line through there and then plugged it on the bottom side of the solenoid, so to make it a little bit more cleaner. That way there's not a bunch of stuff coming up to the front. You know, it took a little bit of time, and what it was just trying to get the hoses, the clamps, just everything underneath to clear and not to be rubbing against something, and that's what just was more time consuming, going from up top and underneath, and it was a little bit more of a pain than I recall the last time I did this. But yeah, at this point, this is completely done. I will be doing the coolant and the oils and everything like that at a later point, but right now I'm going to jump on to the other stuff, which is I'm getting close to the end of the list, and it's going to be the front suspension, finalizing and installing the new bearings with the brake duct cooling, and go from there. So getting close. Okay, so I just started to work on the suspension, and I noticed something real quick. So let's take a peek at what I just found. So as I go to remove the caps to start removing the strut, this one is okay. As you can see, right side arrow facing forward, but you go to the left side, and then you can see that this is installed incorrectly. Caster's way off on this wheel. It's supposed to be facing forward. Now, this car did come in and it had a new control arm installed on this side. So when it was removed, it was just installed incorrectly. Thank goodness that we're here doing some extra work, and yep, found that. So just gonna keep plugging away now. All right, now that I have the rotor off and the center nut for the hub, so I could remove that sucker, what I'm gonna end up doing is grabbing my air hammer and put it right here in the center, and by the vibration of on the spindle itself, I should be able to slide this thing out. I'm hoping that she comes out together all in one piece, and it doesn't leave the race bearing behind, but we'll see. Look at that, and I got it all in one piece. That's it happens every once in a while, but not all the time. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. All right, well, the passenger side, right side, didn't come out so easy. So like as I was stating before, I did the air hammer and I got it out, but the race behind, or the inner race, stayed on the spindle, and that's what makes it a little bit more of a pain to get that off. So had to break out bearing race splitter removal. So yeah, just there's a little slot in the bearing, and I was able to put my clamp on, and she's coming out. So yep, there she is right there. So now we'll continue with the rest of the project. Okay, so there she is. The left-hand side has been installed, the brake ducting. So I have the fender liner installed as well, and had to trim it out right here. On the brake ducting itself, this particular one was a little bit longer, so I had to trim the intersection that butts up in the back side of the bumper on the air duct itself. So that had to be done, and then also I had to trim the inner portion. There was a small little bracket that the ducting was rubbing on, so I had to trim the fog light to get that to work correctly. Now, in front of the sway bar mounts, there are two slots or two holes where the plastic inserts go in, and then the bolts bolt onto that. So she's bolted into place. That's why I had to trim it so I can get the bracket to sit into those holes. But yeah, pretty much this is almost done. The only thing is going to be installed the rest of the components here, which all those have been cleaned and painted and ready for the installation with the new suspension. So yeah, right now I'm going to plug away on the right hand side and get this one knocked out, and then start assembling the rest of the stuff, because at that point all the modifications will pretty much would be done. It's just installing and trimming and stuff. So sweet. All right, so she's all back together now. Pretty much every part that was on my table has been installed now, so we're good to go. There is one little thing that we had to order, and what we ended up having to order was new rotors. And the reason why we had to order new rotors, which I'm a little upset about, because I went in and I cleaned and got all the rust off the hat, so that way they didn't look ugly with all the other stuff in the new wheels. Unfortunately, we have to get the new ones, and the reason being, this car came with two left-hand side rotors. So yeah, on track, we need good ventilation, or ventilation in the correct direction. So we had to order those. But yeah, everything is pretty much all back together. Now the next step is just going to be for me to install the suspension, the tires and the wheels, and adjust the ride height. So stay tuned. All right, everyone, here it is. The car is done now. She's setting pretty good, I think. We don't want it too low, we don't want it too tall, but she's sitting there all nicely. And yeah, it was a huge project, but yes, I prevailed, got her done. So the only thing next is going to be taking it to get it aligned, and just waiting to get that done. And pretty much, yeah, that's the end of part 2, guys. Like always, please help the channel out by doing so. You got to hit the like and subscribe button, and hope to see you in the next one.